Islands look peaceful from a distance. Clear water, open skies, nothing but ocean in every direction. But isolation changes things. When you're surrounded by miles of water, when there's no quick way off, when the last boat leaves and you realize you're stuck there until morning, that's when you start noticing things you didn't before. These are three very creepy, true island horror stories. The first story comes from a man named Elliot who took a seasonal job on a small private island off the coast of Maine. The island wasn't large, just a few rental cabins, a dock, a generator shed, and a main lodge where guests checked in during the summer months. In the off-season, only two staff members stayed behind for maintenance. That year, it was Elliot and an older caretaker named Ron. The last group of tourists left in early October. After that, the final ferry wouldn't return for 3 weeks. Storm season was rolling in. The first few nights were quiet, just wind and waves crashing against the rocks. On the fourth night, Elliot woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside his cabin. Not sand shifting, not wind. Footsteps. Slow, crunching against gravel. He assumed it was Ron doing a perimeter check. But the footsteps didn't pass by. They circled his cabin, one full loop, then another. He sat up in bed, listening carefully. The footsteps stopped right outside his window. He held his breath. There was no knock, no voice, just the feeling that someone was standing inches away from the glass. After nearly a minute, the footsteps resumed, but this time they moved toward the dock. The next morning, Elliot asked Ron if he had been walking around late. Ron stared at him for a second. "I don't patrol at night," he said flatly. They checked the shoreline together. The gravel path around Elliot's cabin showed faint impressions. Bare footprints, too large to be a child, leading toward the water, but not back from it. The tide had been low all night. There was no boat docked. No cab missing, just the ocean stretching out, cold and endless. The second story happened to a woman named Marissa, who went on a weekend trip to a small island in the Caribbean with two friends. The island was sparsely populated, with only one small village and a stretch of rental bungalows near the beach. On their second night, a power outage hit the island. Complete darkness. No streetlights, no hum of electricity, just the sound of waves and insects. They lit candles and decided to sit outside on the sand to wait it out. The beach was empty. No other tourists nearby. After about 15 minutes, Marissa noticed something far down the shoreline. A faint orange glow, like a small fire. She pointed it out to her friends. They assumed it was locals camping, but the glow didn't flicker like a normal fire. It stayed steady, low, almost like a lantern. Curiosity got the better of them. They started walking toward it. The sand felt cool under their feet. The sound of waves masked their footsteps. As they got closer, they realized something strange. There was no group, no chairs, no visible people, just a lantern sitting alone in the sand. It was old-fashioned, metal casing, glass panels, burning steadily. They stopped about 10 feet away. "Who left that?" one of her friends whispered. Before anyone could answer, the lantern went out. Instantly, total darkness. The moon was hidden behind clouds. They stood frozen. Then they heard it. Footsteps behind them. Not from the direction of the village. From the water, slow steps in wet sand, approaching. They turned around, nothing visible, but the footsteps continued. Closer. Marissa felt something brush against the back of her leg. She screamed. All three of them ran back toward their bungalow without looking back. The next morning in daylight, they returned to the spot. There was no lantern, no scorch marks, no footprints except their own. The locals later told them something that unsettled them even more. They said no one on the island used lanterns like that anymore. The final story comes from a marine biology student named Nathan. He volunteered for a research project on a remote island in the Pacific. The island had no permanent residents, just a small research outpost with 3 cabins and a radio tower. The team rotated shifts every month. During Nathan's stay, there were only 4 of them on the island. On the 10th night, a storm rolled in unexpectedly. Heavy winds, sheets of rain, the kind that makes the ocean look violent. Power flickered in the main cabin. Around midnight, the generator cut out. Nathan stepped outside with a flashlight to check the shed. The storm was loud enough to drown out most sounds, but as he crossed the clearing between cabins, he saw something that made him stop. A light. Up on the hill, near the old abandoned lighthouse. The lighthouse hadn't been operational in decades. It wasn't connected to their generator. But through the rain, he could clearly see a rotating beam, slowly sweeping across the ocean. He stood there, drenched, staring. Another member of the team stepped outside behind him. "You see that too?" she asked quietly. They both watched as the light made one full rotation. Then another. Then it stopped abruptly. The storm continued. The lighthouse went dark again. The next morning, they hiked up the hill together. The lighthouse door was rusted shut. No signs of recent entry. Inside, dust and debris covered everything. The light mechanism was corroded beyond repair, completely inoperable. When they reviewed their research logs later, they noticed something else. Several ships had altered course that night, as if responding to a working lighthouse signal. Islands are beautiful, they're quiet, they feel untouched. But isolation does something to a place. When you're cut off from the mainland, when the only way out is by boat, when night falls and the ocean surrounds you in every direction, you realize how small you really are. And sometimes the island doesn't feel empty at all.